Services Marketing, MKT625. Lecture number 20.
Assalamu alaikum, Khawateen Hazrat. This is Wasim Ahsan, your instructor for the course Services Marketing MKT625 at the Virtual University of Pakistan. Research for upward communication is the topic at hand. I had barely started talking about this when the previous lecture came to an end. So therefore, I would like to pick up the threads where I left those. Research for upward communication is meant for top management and all those tiers of management of any company that really want to stay close to the customer. The question might come to your mind, why is it that the management cannot stay close to the customer? The answer lies in their inability because the organization has grown too big. When the organization is small, the top management or the entrepreneurs from that point of view can stay in regular contact with their end consumers and customers. But when organizations grow, it becomes difficult for top management and the middle management in particular to stay in regular contact with their customers. And because of the fact that they lose touch and they want to maintain that touch, knowing what is going on during encounters and the quality of interactions that are taking place between the frontline contact people and customers, they really like to stay in touch with all those developments. And therefore, we say that they like to stay close to the customers. There are a few techniques whereby they can stay close to the customers. The first and the foremost important feature of this research is that there has to be a willingness on part of the management that is not really in direct contact with the customers. So once they have this willingness, then there are certain techniques which enable management to get a flow of information which starts at the bottom. And that is why it is known as upward communication, because it flows bottom up. Frontline contact personnel are the ones who collect all this information and then communicate that to the top management. What are those techniques? Let's look into those one by one. And let me tell you that these techniques can be informal and these also can be formal. So on a scale which starts from being informal to being highly formalized, we have these different techniques. The first one is the executive visits. The second one is what you call executive listenings. And the third one is communication with intermediate and internal customers. And the fourth one is employees' suggestions. There are a few other techniques as well, but these are the ones which really are popular among marketing managers. And therefore, I would like to confine myself with these four. Executive visits is a very simple and a time-honored kind of a concept whereby all those managers who really want to stay close to the customers visit customers. The basic idea is to generate information about their requirements, about their opinions and attitudes and their reactions to the services which they have been buying from your company. And the second important objective is to give a sense of your willingness and your commitment to the cause, meaning you have to prove to the customer that you stand committed to fulfill the needs and their requirements. And that is something which really brings the management closer to the customers. Customers feel very confident, and this is a way of instilling confidence into the customers because top management is the one that makes all the decisions. And having top management or the tier right below that at their premises, talking with them about their requirements goes a long way in making customers extremely comfortable. It takes the level of anxiety away from the customers and they like to stay loyal to the company. The second technique which is applied by management is executive listening. Now, executive listening with the help of information technology has become quite very popular among almost all large corporations. And I would like to give you one example about the toll-free 0800 numbers which are instituted just in order to facilitate customers about their valuable information that can flow the way of the company. customers could also have an opportunity of lodging complaints if there are any. And with the help of the information which is generated through these calls and the complaints which customers may lodge, companies can glean and extract a lot of important information. The wealth of information you can imagine which is generated with the help of all the telephone calls which are recorded is phenomenal. And you will agree with me that many of the corporations, may those be telephone companies, mobile telephone companies in particular, or banking corporations, they're talking about online banking and credit card transactions and so on and so forth, really make it known to you that your call is being recorded for the purpose of improving quality. So the objective is to extract information so that providers can come up with recovery strategies if corrections are to be made, meaning if customers do not happen to be satisfied, and they can also reinforce those strategies which they think are really working very well, because that is a reflection of the level of satisfaction which the customers could have with your company. So this is kind of a technique which is more formal than executive visits, because it enables you to generate quite a lot of information which is then tabulated and analyzed, and the inferences made out of that information, and then strategic decisions made on the basis of all that. The third technique, which is again very popular among managers, is top management communication with intermediate and internal customers. Now, this really is upward communication, but I would start talking about the communication which first should flow from top to the bottom in order to fulfill certain prerequisites before information starts bouncing back, meaning before information which is generated at the contact level is flown upwards toward the middle and top management. The reason top management has to talk with intermediate and internal customers is because there are certain requirements which are to be fulfilled for those customers, meaning the intermediate and internal customers, before they become effective and efficient in providing the top management with the valuable information generated at their level. So let's talk about who intermediate customers are and who are the internal customers. Well, intermediate customers could be your distributors, your dealers, brokers, and agents, and the franchises, if you happen to be a huge franchise. Their requirements could vary from the amount of commissions they make on transactions to things which are more strategic in nature, and those are training and coaching of their personnel. Until the time you train and coach their personnel about the features of your service and the delivery mechanism, there's no way that those people can talk with the prospects in a convincing way. And therefore, training and coaching strategies could have to be undertaken by the principals, meaning the sponsors of the services, before those the services are rendered by the intermediate customers to the end customers. I would like to give you one example of an intermediate customer. Just recently, one of the largest Pakistani banks has gotten into an agreement as distributor for one of the largest American insurance companies. And by becoming distributors for that insurance company, the Pakistani bank is going to sell the insurance products all over the country, meaning through all the branches this bank has. And this bank really has lots and lots of branches all over the country. Before the bank launches different products, the personnel from the bank have to be trained and coached about the features of those services. I mean, until the time that these people who are going to sell those services are educated about the product itself or the products, if it happens to be a bundle of products, which I think it will be, there is no way that the intermediate customers, meaning these personnel at the bank, can efficiently and effectively sell those services. This is the one example of this thing having the character of a a very strategic nature. There could be so many different examples. The second requirement which that I talked about was the commissions. The commissions and meaning the financials which take a very important position when it comes to negotiations between sponsors and intermediate customers are also quite very important. And therefore, sponsors or principals have to see to it that intermediate providers are comfortably looked after when it comes to financials, because in the absence of that, they may lose motivation behind selling those services. And they might think because services are not really their own, they might lose interest in selling those. When you are distributors, you think in terms of changing principles, and this could be one of those situations in which the distributors they may not be as enthusiastic as the original providers would be. The second level of customers, or the type of customers, is the internal customers with whom top management has to maintain a direct contact in terms of fulfilling their requirements. Now, again, their requirements also center on training and coaching. These people have got to be educated on different ideas and new concepts as and when those are incorporated into the features of existing services, or by way of introduction of new service products. So until the time these people are educated about all those new features, there's no way that they can effectively sell those services. And since they happen to be your colleagues, all the more reason that you should get into the concepts of internal and interactive marketing in order to train those people to fully deliver services according to the quality parameters which you have established. And other requirements which you have to fulfill for your colleagues is by way of the reward systems. Companies have to be in a position to pinpoint star performance, and they have to reward those performers who can happen to deliver the services in the best possible manner. And you know that there are so many different ways and means to identify such people. You can do that very directly, and you also can do that indirectly by way of having mystery shoppers who can provide you with the right feedback without any bias about the quality of personnel that are interacting with your end customers. So communication with intermediate customers and internal customers is extremely important, because they are the people who generate valuable information for the top management. And then that valuable information which is generated at their level is flown upwards. And that is why it is known as research for upward communication. The fact is that communication is also research, and along with the findings of marketing research, which is carried out in a well-structured manner, the wealth of information that is generated by way of employing the two kinds of research methods could be extremely valuable for the organizations. Another kind of technique which is employed by companies is what you call employee suggestions. But before I get on with the employee suggestions, I would like to show you the one graphical presentation which shows us the importance of different kinds of communications that we can make use of. If you take a look at this slide, company top management is sitting right on top within that green area, and we have three different arrows moving toward that top. Or in other words, we can say that all these arrows converge at one single point, and that is the point of company top management, where all strategic decisions are taken. The leftmost arrow is about marketing research. We have educated ourselves about different studies of marketing research that we can make use of in order to find facts that become the basis of strategic decision making. And then right in the middle, we have an arrow again moving upwards, which says customers to management. Now, this is the kind of communication and information which I was talking about, meaning information flows toward the top management from customers, because top management visits these customers, they listen to customers, And therefore, the information that flows upwards is known as the one from customers to management. The third arrow, which is the rightmost, is about management to management. This really signifies the communication which I was talking about in relation to intermediate and internal customers in particular. Internal customers are your colleagues, and they also form part of the management, and therefore the information that flows from those people to the top management could be termed as management to management. So you can see that any communication that is intended toward making better decisions, it has to flow upwards, and this is what we call communication or research for upward communication. And that is why I said, along with marketing research, this communication really plays a very important role, because when you put together all these into a proper perspective, you really generate a wealth of information that you need to make your strategic decisions. Back to the technique which I just pointed out before I showed you this particular illustration, and that is about employees' suggestions. Well, this is an extremely critical technique because top management relies quite a bit on the suggestions given by frontline contact people to them. And the suggestions coming from the contact people take on extremely important dimensions because these stem from the interactions and the encounters, and the frontline people being the most important actors, along with the customers, of course, during those encounters, really come up with suggestions which are worth considering. Now, if those suggestions really are implementable, then top management goes ahead with implementation of these suggestions. And when implemented, it really becomes a source of a high level of motivation on part of those frontline contact employees, because they feel very confident and enthusiastic about the fact that their suggestions could have been accepted and implemented. So what happens is they start working with a zeal and enthusiasm which is much stronger and bigger than what they have been exhibiting in the past. And that is the beauty of this communication, which takes place between top management and the low management or the frontline contact people. Now, again, before these suggestions flow toward top management has to communicate downwards, meaning they have to be in contact with the frontline low management people, because they really can come up with things which can be really invaluable. In order for these people to come up with extremely valuable advice or suggestions, it is important that top management create a culture where suggestions could be freely given. Not all suggestions could be implementable. Some of the suggestions could not be very practical, and therefore the objective here is not to ridicule or to run down those suggestions. The objective here is to do some sifting and go for those which really can have strategic repercussions for the company. I mean, strategic implications in positive sense for the company. And therefore, communicating with the frontline contact people must become part of the company culture before those people start communicating with the top management in an upwardly manner. Actually, keeping the management informed that really wants to stay informed results in an organization which is a cohesive whole and is geared toward satisfying customers under any circumstances. This is a statement that I've made. You have to be an organization which is a very effective, cohesive whole, geared towards satisfying needs of their customers under any circumstances. This is something to be underlined, because in the absence of personnel who are not motivated and who do not communicate with top management, and or in the absence of top management that is not willing to communicate downwards and hence motivate those people to feel free in communicating with them, meaning top management, again, may result in an organization which is not geared toward satisfying needs of their customers. So the objective is to satisfy your customers under any circumstances so that they end up as satisfied customers, loyal customers, and they come back to the company over and over again. Even those customers who may lie within that zone of indifference have got to be approached in a very well-planned manner so that you also can bring those into the fold of loyal customers, thereby increasing the base of your loyal customers. I'm going to talk about this loyalty factor and the need to have the very strong bonds and relationship with the loyal customers in a few moments from now. But before that, let me show you with the help of two graphical presentations as to how the communication which takes place as kind of a two-way traffic plays an important role toward generating extremely important information which becomes the basis for your making strategic decisions. Let's take a look at those one by one. As you can see from this slide, again, you have company top management sitting right on top, and at the bottom, you have internal and intermediate customers. Now, this is a slide which shows the relationship between company top management and customers, meaning management of the company and also intermediate customers who are distributors, agents, brokers, etc., etc. So as you can see, there are two arrows, the one which is flowing downwards and the other flowing upwards. The one that flows downwards signifies the communication that takes place from top management, meaning that is initiated at the top and flows downwards. Now, this is the motivating part, because top management is communicating with all these people in terms of training them, coaching them, talking about their requirements, and giving them an assurance that they would be properly trained and coached, and their requirements will be taken into consideration, and the rest gets started by middle management, and it becomes part of the implementation strategy. Now, when that happens, these people who are internal customers, meaning the frontline people, supervisors, and total staff that is involved in providing the service, along with the intermediate customers who may happen to be, like I said, your distributors or agents, start communicating with the company top management free of any inhibitions. And the information that flows that way is the one which is of a lot of value. Let us now move on to the next slide, which is particularly about your internal customers. And these are the internal customers who are good at giving you some good suggestions. And that is why I call it reinforced benchmarks as a result of employee suggestions. Take a careful look at this diagram. You can see that we have two concentric circles sitting in the middle of the figure. The inner circle, which is all yellow, is about existing benchmarks. And you can also see that we have the two different inputs, the one in the form of red and other in the form of yellow. Red signifies, along with that arrow, the communication that takes place from top management downwards. So that is a very important input, and I think I've talked about that pretty much in detail. The next one, or the other one in blue, is what flows upwards from employees in the form of suggestions. Now, when these two inputs play their respective roles, what we have is a pool of existing benchmarks which become the standardized kind of quality parameters, and the delivery of service, meaning the whole mechanism has got to work according to these established benchmarks. Now, what happens is, when communication takes place from top down, it motivates employees. When employees feel motivated, and especially when they know that their suggestions have been taken into consideration, those are implemented, and the company is getting better results, they start working with a larger amount of enthusiasm, and they put in their best. and they bring into play those motivating forces which were not seen before. And as a result of that, what happens is they reinforce the existing benchmarks. And you can see those reinforced benchmarks by way of the outer circle, which again is shown in kind of light brown color. And this is what is the expanded area of the benchmarks, meaning now the company practically has higher benchmarks. And the beauty of this communication is that enhanced benchmarks or reinforced benchmarks have been created by employees themselves. And when employees create those enhanced benchmarks, it automatically means that they take the ownership for those benchmarks, and they do not find faults with the strategic direction which the company has taken. They do not crib about those benchmarks being too harsh and hard on them, and thereby exhibiting their possible inability to carry those out. No, it is not that. It is total ownership of those benchmarks by the people who came up with the suggestions that led toward those reinforced benchmarks. And that, like I said, is the beauty of this communication that takes place as kind of a two-way traffic. But then again, I would like to come back to the point that basically it is the communication that takes place from bottom up, and the objective of this communication is to let the management make better decisions. And the prerequisite for the contact people to generate that information and to communicate that to upward side is by way of keeping them motivated. And you can keep them motivated by fulfilling their requirements first, because they also happen to be your customers. And in order for them to be effective while they deal with end customers, they've got to be fully trained, coached, and other requirements by way of reward system, incentives, and anything else that may come into your mind or you have educated yourselves about through the courses of principles of management or the marketing management are the ones that you have to keep into consideration. Now, with this, we are done with the communication or the research part. And I would like to summarize this once again for you, that along with marketing research, this is the kind of research which varies from being informal to being also formal. And this is generated for the benefit of the top management and middle management, meaning those tiers of management that are not into direct contact with their customers, only because of the fact that organizations grow bigger and bigger, making it difficult for these people to stay in close contact with their customers, meaning end customers. And the only way out is to follow certain techniques. And the techniques that I talked about are executive visits, executive listenings, and communication with intermediate and internal customers, and employee suggestion. Let us now move on to the next topic, which is going to be about relationships. Why is it that relationship marketing has taken on some very important dimensions over the last few years? And why is it that the marketing managers could run after maintaining those relationships along with creating new customers also is going to be the topic for the remaining part of the lecture. And before I proceed with relationship marketing, I would like to draw your attention toward two facts. The one is that we still are in the process of learning as to how to plug the gap number one, which takes place because of some differences of perceptions between what management thinks are the expectations and requirements of their customers, and what customers think are their requirements and they should get from the company. And the reason companies may not be in a position because they do not stay very close to the customers. And it is in that backdrop that we have educated ourselves about the importance of marketing research, and along with that, other research that could help us generate certain facts which are good for us to make better decisions. And the reason decision-making becomes a little more tricky in terms of services marketing is that we have to deal where there's so many different kinds of customers, even within the same segments of the market. Now, this is the tricky part, that the homogeneous service products create certain challenges of customization. Now, this statement sounds kind of contradictory, because on the one hand, we are talking about service products being homogeneous, and meaning they're very similar, and they could be identical, congruous. On the other hand, we are talking about customization. And this is where the beauty of services marketing really comes in. And I shall be talking about this from time to time. I'm going to devote the rest of the lecture toward this particular point. The reason that we have to face these challenges of customization are that we are dealing with a configuration of different needs expressed by the customers within the same segment. And when that happens, we have to go to the level of each and every individual customer. And in turn, what happens is that we have to come up with customized kind of the marketing strategies. So in other words, you can say that marketing people may have to deal with marketing plans intended for individual customers. And you will recall that this was one of the studies, or one of the methods, that marketing managers really have at their disposal in order to find out what really are the requirements of their individual customers with the help of a requirement study, or a couple of other studies that really can pinpoint toward that the direction. And you will also recall that this could be a situation when you are dealing with other businesses, meaning the B2B scenarios. It may happen in B2C situations as well. As a matter of fact, it does happen so. And the answer seems to be lying in customization, because that takes care of the variations in needs expressed by the same people within the same segments from time to time. And therefore, we feel the need of getting into relationships. And that is because of the precise reason that the marketing people develop relationships, and then they come up with marketing plans according to the requirements of one individual customer. This is something that we talked about and learned about during our learning on marketing research, and that is why the marketing research is conducted, and along with that, the kind of research which I talked about just a few moments ago. But the fact is that the customization seems to be the answer. Now, here again, you might find kind of a paradox. You might think that there are services which are extremely homogeneous. For example, power, meaning electricity, and gas. You have one huge segment that uses power and gas. Why is it that we're not talking of customization? Well, according to the experts, it also happens to be a customization because we are dealing with one huge segment, which is like one individual, having the same need, having the same requirement of using electricity and gas. There are no qualitative variations in the needs that they may express from time to time. I mean, they need electricity, they need gas, and the usage remains very consistent. The only variation that you might see is in terms of the quantities consumed by different consumers. And therefore, you can say that this is the one segment which is the segment of all, and can be treated as a segment which is about just one individual. And when you divide one segment into different subsegments in order to come up with customized marketing strategies, because you're dealing with services, you are talking about a segment which you might call segment of one. Because I said that the one customer could be just one segment, and you carry out marketing studies taking into consideration just one customer, trying to unearth his requirements, and then coming up with customized kind of marketing plans, so you can easily say that that is a segment of one. Marketing experts say that a segment which is so huge and in which the usage is so consistent, and you do not really go across demographic and psychographic lines, there is no change of behavior in terms of segmentation, you are dealing with the segment of one. So that this segment also happens to be the segment of one, and the service that you provide also happens to be kind of a customized service. So getting back to the need for developing relationships, whether you develop relationships because you're getting into customization. Now, again, you see, there could be an argument that these companies which are dealing with the huge segments or the segment of one, how come they develop relationships with their customers? Because the customers are into millions. Well, I can give you the one example of the telecommunication corporation, meaning our nation's largest telecommunication corporation that has diversified itself from being just a landline telephone company to being an entity which is dealing in so many different products. And with a sense of pride, they say that they offer you solutions on so many different fronts. Not only just the landline, they offer you dial-up internet, they offer you broadband internet, they offer you TV, caller ID, the messaging service, and so on and so forth. It's a combination of so many different products, and don't forget that people from the same segment can have different requirements. Somebody going for just the dial-up, and somebody going for, along with the telephone line, CLI, along with broadband, along with something else. So what I'm saying is that even a company which is, in today's terms, is very generic, can also get into diversification by way of creating different segments, and those segments will lead us toward the conclusion that it is the segment of one at the end of the day that we are dealing with. May that be the whole company dealing with just one segment, or may that be one company dealing with so many different kinds of customers. When it comes to creating and maintaining relationships, we have this support of technology, and with the help of that, we can carry out marketing research in order to see to it that a cross-section of our customers who we may not study by their demographic and psychographic characteristics are satisfied. And having so many different techniques at hand and at our disposal, we really can get into finding out that we are keeping them satisfied. So relationship marketing is a function of keeping your customers satisfied, retaining them, and making the whole operation more profitable than if you are not maintaining those relationships. And I can say that relationship marketing starts where transactional marketing ends. It is the beginning of the end of the transactional marketing. You have just struck a commercial deal, and this is where the building of the relationship starts. This is something which I talked about in one of my earlier lectures as well, but the importance is that the relationship is to be grown and nurtured with the passage of time. Experts say it is much more profitable and easy to retain customers than to run after new customers. Now, this is not a philosophy which talks against transactional marketing. This is something which I must hasten to add, that it does not run down the philosophy of marketing and selling when it comes to generating new customers. As a matter of fact, if you do not generate new customers, you cannot maintain relationships with them, and you cannot retain them. The generation of new customers has to go on side by side. But what is important is that this has shifted focus from the transaction onto the relationship. And because of that renewed focus, we can see that organizations have become more profitable. Profitable because of the fact that you do not really have to invest time into convincing new customers who may fall within that well-known zone of indifference to come to your company, because these are the customers who are not loyal to anyone, and they are the ones you really have to work hard on, and they are the ones who are going to make you spend quite a bit of money. How? Well, the answer lies in your having to kick off advertising campaigns, expensive advertising campaigns, because you want to attract new customers. You also going to have to go into promotional discounts along with other promotional techniques, which are all money. You may have to give them straightaway price discounts in order to attract them to your company. The fact is that new customers are not profitable in the formative period, meaning once you have struck the first deal, you cannot recover the investment that you made into winning them over. They become profitable only after a passage of time, once they start coming back to you again and again. So the profitability or the attraction of relationships and retention become very obvious as against acquisition and transaction. So in other words, we can say that this basically is a paradigm shift which signifies a fundamental change in the philosophy which shifts focus from acquisitions and transactions to relationships and retention. The meaning relationships and retentions are more important than bringing in the new customers because it is more profitable. Again, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that it is not against bringing new customers. You have to bring in new customers, but once you have brought them into the fold of your customer base, you've got to see to it that they remain with you, they stick with you, they do not go elsewhere, meaning they do not feel the pull from the competition. And when that happens, it obviously signifies that your service features are better than competition, and the delivery mechanism that you have in place is much better than them, and all the dimensions of quality on which customers evaluate your company are much better than that of competition. And you can recall very easily all the 5 dimensions that I've been talking about in different lectures. Having understood this, the basic shift, which happens to be a paradigm shift, we can say that this basically is a strategic orientation, and it works both ways. It works for the providers, and it also works for the customers, because customers do not really have to run after new providers in order to get better value. The fact is that just like it is more expensive for the providers to run after new customers, it also is quite cumbersome and more expensive for customers to go after different suppliers, because they also have to spend time. And just look at the B2B scenario. The other party also happens to be a business house. They are also hard-pressed for time. They have too many different demands, and running after different suppliers just in order to get a marginal better value is not the objective that many companies feel actuated for or actuated by. And therefore, we can rest assured that as long as we can keep our customers satisfied by offering core quality, we can keep them to our company and prevent them from going elsewhere. Owing to this, the new orientation, we have to look into 3 important elements that really characterize the nature of relationships. And the one is a new mindset. We have to start with a new mindset when we are trying to develop relationships. We have to have the mindset of relationships and retentions as against acquisition and transaction. Because the very philosophy that customers will come to us because we happen to be a good company, offering good quality, offering good value, may not work as a logical argument for a long time. The fact is, customers could have so many different choices, and everybody out in the market who happens to be your competitor is offering good value. It's only that you, because of a good relationship, can retain your customer, and therefore you've got to start working within your organization with a new mindset, meaning the old assumptions should be gone and new assumptions must take root, and that is what you call a paradigm shift. The other element which takes a lot of importance in relationship marketing is you have to have a different organizational culture. Now, when you have a different mindset or a new mindset, you are working toward developing that new culture. If, again, people think that customers are going to be attracted because of the advertising campaign that we have kicked off, and because of the promotions that we introduce from time to time, or because of the fact that we happen to be a very ingenious kind of company that keeps inventing different kinds of attractions for our customers, and therefore we don't really have to worry about retaining customers, is on the wrong path. There has to be a culture which initiates the marketing strategies, and which really capitalizes on the philosophy that is compatible with the new mindset. And that is the essence of relationship marketing. Another element which is again very important is reward systems. You have to have better institutionalized reward systems within the organization, because that is something where many organizations really lack. The fact is, many of the organizations in today's world, I mean, including the developed world, I'm not talking about the developing world, but on the global basis, many organizations pay attention to incentives for bringing in new customers. And this is a recorded fact. By not paying equal attention to giving incentives to all those who are responsible for retaining customers, what you're doing is not initiating the implementation of the change in philosophy. And that is the essence of it. We have to have a mindset which is geared toward this change, an organization culture which is geared toward this change, and we have to have a reward system which keeps people motivated so that this change can be implemented, and people start paying more attention toward maintaining relationships so that they can cut unnecessary costs, meaning all those costs which can be cut, and the companies be made more profitable. Let's move on with what really are the goals of relationship marketing. The primary goal of relationship marketing is to build a base of loyal customers who is a profitable base, and who really contributes toward a higher level of profitability. That is the essence of RM, meaning relationship marketing. And I think I've made it very clear to you how you really can make your company more profitable by cutting unnecessary costs. So I don't really have to go into the more details for the time being as to how you can do that. But the goals remain three. The one is you attract customers, the other is you retain customers, and the third one is you enhance the relationship. I would like to rub in the statement that I made earlier that relationship marketing, or RM, does not go against transactional marketing. It starts from there, as a matter of fact, and therefore the very first goal of RM is to attract customers, and that is attracting new customers. Until the time that you have new customers, there's no question of developing relationships and retaining them. So you have to attract them, and once the attraction has done its part and customers can have come to the base of the existing customers of your company, you have to start playing your role as relationship managers from there. And the objective of retaining them takes into consideration factors like quality and satisfaction. Since we really have educated ourselves about these two factors in detail, I don't really think there's a need for that to be talked about all over again. So you retain customers by offering them on a consistent basis good quality which they are used to. Quality must not drop. If at all there has to be variation, it has to be on the upper side by creating enhanced benchmarks. And that also is a point that I talked about in detail during this lecture. But once you have enhanced the benchmarks, what happens is you keep your customers even more loyal, and they become not even more loyal. They bring in new customers to the company, and these new customers also they become loyal customers if you continue with the same zeal and enthusiasm by providing the same level of quality. And this is what you call the enhancement of relationship, meaning enhancement of relationship signifies itself by seeing the more customers coming into the customer base with the help of existing customers. And this is where the role of the referrals that comes in. Loyal customers they carry a lot of weight when it comes to attracting new customers because of the credence value, because of the fact that services are very experiential in nature. What really plays a greater trick than a whole lot of advertising and promotions is a strong referral from an existing loyal customer. And that does the trick for the company, and that is what you call the enhancement of relationships. So having known these three goals of relationship marketing, we can now move on to what really are the benefits for customers and firms. Before I start talking about these the benefits one by one, which I think is going to be in the next lecture for the shortage of time, let me tell you that customers really look into just one thing, and that thing is what you call value. Now the question is what value is. The value basically is a function of quality and satisfaction. And the fact is the price also plays an important role into this equation. But there is something more to it which we can talk about in the context of the services marketing. When it comes to value, customers like to see and have a trade-off between what they give and what they get in return. What they give is the monetary side, meaning that is the price factor. And what they get in return is what I just explained, is quality and satisfaction. Now, when it comes to services, it has something more to it also, and that is the side which we have to look into in the next lecture, because there are so many different kinds of benefits which really strengthen relationships between providers and customers, and that is something I'm going to talk about in the next lecture. But the basis of all those benefits is that we have to offer a good value to our customers. And good value does not mean that we offer the kind of quality which is the best in the world and we offer a price which is the lowest in the world. No, we've got to offer a consistent level of quality, and we've got to maintain that by having our customers really feel satisfied so that they can come back to us again and again. Now, how that happens, I'll be talking about later. But before we part, let me give you a brief recap of today's lecture. It is extremely important for us to communicate with the top management by offering them with all those facts which can become the basis of good decision making. And in order to do that, we have certain techniques that we follow within organizations. There are certain things which really which are initiated by the top management, and it takes into its fold the lower management also, and in the process it becomes kind of a two-way traffic. And then we have talked about the importance of relationships in the relational perspective of segmentation, as to how relationships can be explained, or how they really gain importance in the light of customization, which is a function of segmentation. And this is something which I'll be talking in more detail also. So with that, I would like to say thank you to you all for your attendance, and I look forward to talking with you in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz until then.